25 points, a new career high for our rookie center, Maxime Raynaud, our second round pick. He continues to really impress with Domantas Sabonis out. I wasn't sure coming into the season how much run Raynaud would get. I wasn't sure how ready he would truly be for the NBA, and by no means is it perfect. And at times you can still see him being a rookie center out there, especially on the defensive end or rebounding the basketball. But his skills are so impressive. His touch around the rim, starting out this game, hitting a couple of threes. Sure, one was a bank shot, but that's all good. Get that confidence up. And I love the way that he was just confidently shooting from three. After last game, he passed up a couple of open ones, and I criticized him for it. And then here he is, already improving on that. And that's what you get when you play these young players minutes. They improve. They learn things game after game after game. And so despite the blowout loss to the Houston Rockets, 121-95, there's that positive that we can take out of it, that we saw a lot of minutes from young players, but mainly Maxime Raynaud playing the 32 minutes. He is practically the starting center. He's not actually starting games, but he's the full-time center. He's playing the most minutes, and he has been for a little bit now. Drew Eubanks, again, I've talked about it for a couple of games now. This him starting, it's a sham. He's not actually starting, and it's a tiny gripe I have, because as long as Maxime is getting all the minutes, I'm good. But just kind of why? Just start him at this point. Max came into the game, I think, with 2 minutes into the first quarter. Why? Why not just start him at that point? It just kind of comes to this thing of Drew Eubanks has to start, I guess, because he's the veteran. That's kind of what this team is doing. You got to start all the veterans. I don't know why, because of politics, or you're trying to get their trade value up or something. I don't know. But as long as you're playing the young guys minutes off the bench, I really don't care. And that's what they did in this game. And they had a competitive first half, took the lead into halftime, but then in the second half, it was a lot of the young guys. I mean, even in the first half, it was young guys as well. What we've seen for a little bit now is the bench coming in full of young guys and playing well in the first half, but then the Kings shortening the bench in the second half. And so a lot of times we'll see Raynaud, and we'll see Precious Achiuwa, and of course we'll see Malik Monk off the bench. And we'll see Keon and Neek in the first half, but then Keon and Neek will get kind of pulled from the rotation in the second half. We didn't see that in this game. And that was even with the game still within reach, right? It wasn't just garbage time. And so I'd like to see that. And so I think this is the type of game where it's all you can ask for. Against a very good Houston Rockets team, you stayed competitive for a half, you kept fighting, and we got to see the young guys throughout the entire game, and then we got to see them play a ton of minutes in the second half. And you got a very good performance from one of them in Maxime Raynaud. For the past 2 weeks, it's kind of been Keegan Murray. He's been the guy that's been keeping my spirits very high, and the guy that I've had a ton of fun watching. And as long as there's at least one player per game that I'm having a good time watching, then that's fine by me for now. And so this was a game where Keegan Murray struggled, and it makes sense that this would be the game that he would struggle in. He's had a couple of more inefficient games, or games where he didn't dominate the entire game, like the last game or his first game of the season against the Grizzlies, where he was a little more inefficient. But this was the first one where he truly struggled on the offensive end. His defense is always there, but he struggled more on the offensive end. It's a Rockets team with a lot of length and with a lot of size. We'll get into kind of why he struggled a little bit later, but it makes sense that this Rockets team would be a team he would struggle against, and the Kings in general. It was really impressive that they had the lead going into halftime. It was 52-51 at halftime. Because when you look at this Kings team and you look at the weaknesses that they have, and then you look over at the Rockets team and you look at the strengths that they have, it doesn't match up very well. I mean, for one, the Rockets are just a much better team, period. But then you look at why the Rockets are good versus why the Kings are bad. The Kings are bad because without Sabonis, they cannot rebound on the defensive end. They also really struggle in the half court offensively. And then the third thing is kind of they're small, unathletic, old players. A lot of them. Sure, not all of them are small, not all of them are old, not all of them are unathletic, but a lot of the players the Kings play are at least two of those three things. And then you look over at the Rockets, and they're one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the league, with the best offensive rebounder in the NBA in Steven Adams. And they play Steven Adams and Alperen Şengün and Clint Capella off the bench. And they have Kevin Durant, Jabari Smith Jr., Amen Thompson. They're also younger and more athletic, and they swarm you in the half court defensively. So all of the Rockets' strengths are the Kings' weaknesses. And so it was never a game that I thought the Kings had a shot in. The Kings were able to stay in this game in the first half, one, by some early 3-point shooting, but also because they did a good job when the Rockets would get the ball in the paint at just trying to cause turnovers, trying to swipe down on the ball, really attacking the hands of the Rockets' big men. And forcing a lot of those turnovers was key. And they also played some pretty good transition defense. Early on, the Rockets were out shooting the Kings. And what I mean by out shooting it, I mean in terms of attempts. And that was something I expected, with turnovers and offensive rebounds likely to favor the Rockets. The Rockets had 8 shot attempts and the Kings had 2. The Kings' half-court offense was just very, very stagnant. I felt like they got some stops and they pushed the ball, and then they would back it out, and they wouldn't really take advantage. And against this Rockets team, with the way that this Kings team has been playing in the half-court offensively, like, you have to press an advantage, even if it's a slight one. You have to just press it and maybe force it in transition, because this team is just not scoring in the half court. And so it resulted in a lot of turnovers. And to the Kings' credit, they didn't allow those turnovers in the first half to really hurt them. They did a good job of getting back, and a lot of times the Kings would turn it over, and then they would force a turnover as the Rockets tried to attack in transition. They would kind of recover by intercepting a ball, something like that. So the effort to try to disrupt a lot of those transition opportunities and just to try to force turnovers was good. But the main thing that had the Kings in this game early on was the 3-point shooting. And it was 3-point shooting from guys that you don't necessarily expect. And that's why it worked so well. Because it was Russell Westbrook hitting 2 of them, the Rockets backing up off of him, and then Maxime Raynaud hitting 2 of them, with Şengün just not even trying to defend him, not even trying to get out to him, pretty much turning his back on Raynaud. And, Max banked in one of them, so that was a little lucky, but it got his confidence going. And this is what I wanted to see after he turned down open shots in the last game. This time, he came out and he was firing, and I loved that. He was just very, very aggressive. He had 12 points in that first quarter. The Kings were living from beyond the arc. And despite a lot of the statistics not going the Kings' way, like points in the paint being 22-12 for the Rockets, offensive rebounds being 7-2 for the Rockets, the second chance points were only 8-5 Rockets, despite those 7 offensive rebounds. They only allowed 8 points, and they scored, again, 5 themselves off of 2 offensive rebounds. So the Kings were almost never going to win the possession battle in this game, but they were just kind of battling to try and stay in it by making the Rockets' offense as inefficient as possible. There were plenty of times where the Rockets' athleticism absolutely dominated, especially in the open court. Like Amen Thompson came out, and he came out pretty hot. He was attacking DeMar DeRozan. But then at the same time, I do have to give DeMar DeRozan credit for putting up a bit of a fight, because although he was being targeted, he was also getting a ton of deflections. The Kings were fighting defensively. Keegan got a big kind of open court block on Jabari Smith Jr. driving to the rim. Neek followed it up on the exact same possession by getting a block. I think the Rockets still ended up scoring on that possession, and that kind of just shows their relentlessness on the offensive glass. But I did like the Kings' adjustment to when the Rockets went on a run late in that first quarter, when they went on an 8-0 run and they exploited that size advantage. The Kings went to a zone and immediately got a steal. And the Rockets countered with a zone of their own, but I loved how the Kings' bench came in. And what we've been seeing is the Kings will go with a full starting unit and then they'll put in a full bench unit. And that full starting unit also had Raynaud in it for quite a bit of the first quarter. But they love going with this full bench unit of Malik Monk, Keon Ellis, Neek Clifford, Precious Achiuwa, and Maxime Raynaud. It's been effective, and it was definitely effective last game. And it was pretty effective again in this one. It kept the Kings in the game, and after an 8-0 Rockets run, they really started to get it going offensively by moving the ball a lot better than the starting unit did against this zone defense, actually putting the ball, they were moving the ball quickly, and then they would put the ball on the ground and beat that first man to be able to get it to the middle of the zone. And once they did that, from there, it was a bunch of drop-off passes, a lot of them to Max, who was finishing around the rim. His touch looks very, very good around the rim, and he's always in the right spots, and he has a lot of moves. He's obviously very comfortable scoring inside. You can tell, at Stanford, he was getting in the post and he was going to an assortment of post moves, And I think he's doing a fairly good job of transitioning that to an NBA style. There were still some struggles, like when he was trying to post up Amen Thompson 2 times in a row, and it didn't work. Amen Thompson, despite obviously being smaller than Max, that's still he's a formidable defender. But you can see a lot of the times where Max kind of is getting himself into a deep position, but he's not catching the ball in the post, but he's just getting himself deep and then being able to use his looks around the rim, his little floaters or hook shots, or a one dribble post move where he's already caught it deep and he's just using that to then finish around the rim. And that's exactly what he needs to do, because he's not going to be catching the ball in the post and being allowed to dribble like 3 or 4 times. That's never going to happen. So he has to be able to have these quick moves down low to be able to score, and that's exactly what we saw. The second quarter felt like more of a struggle offensively, even though the Kings scored the exact same amount of points as the first. And I think the reason that it felt like that for me was just because the half-court offense, the difference between how the Kings ended the first quarter versus started the second quarter and really played the entire second quarter offensively, it was a pretty stark contrast. In the first quarter, or to end the first quarter, that bench unit, they were really moving the ball well. Everyone was touching the ball, drive and kick and then drop off to the big man down low, and it was beautiful basketball. The second quarter was not the same. It was a lot more isolation basketball, a lot more one guy dribbling the air out of the ball, but DeMar DeRozan carried the offense, and that's why the Kings were able to take the lead at halftime, because DeMar was carrying the offense. He finished the half with 12 points, but the offense definitely didn't look as smooth as it did when everyone was moving the ball. When the starting unit came back in, when DeMar DeRozan and Zach LaVine came back into the game, and Russell Westbrook, it was definitely a lot more dribbling. It was a lot of Russell Westbrook catching the ball in the perimeter, kind of forcing him to be that three-point threat, which worked in the first quarter because he made a couple of threes. Didn't work in the second quarter because he wasn't knocking them down, and it was a lot more stagnant basketball, kind of like we saw at the start of the first quarter. So I think it's just disappointing the way the starting unit does not move the ball the same way that the bench unit does. I will say the Kings did a good job of winning the possession battle at the start of the second quarter, because if you remember, at the start of the first, the Rockets had 8 shot attempts when the Kings had 2. Well, at the start of the second quarter, it was the exact opposite. It was that flipped. It was the Kings with 8 shot attempts and the Rockets had 2. The Kings were forcing a ton of turnovers and were trying to counter the size of the Rockets by forcing those turnovers, getting out and running. Malik Monk had that jelly reverse layup. It was so nice. They also tried to get Keegan really involved in the offense at the start of the second quarter, and it just didn't work. I mean, he did hit one mid-ranger, and that was the one time where he had Reed Shepherd on him. But every other time, he had a bigger defender on him, whether it was Amen Thompson or Jabari Smith Jr. or somebody else. Even later in the game, sometimes it was Alperen Şengün. And it was forcing Keegan to create off the dribble a lot, but create off the dribble against these guys with athleticism, with good hands, with a bunch of size. And he was struggling. I think the biggest thing that struggled for him was his handle. Sure, there were shots that he missed that he definitely could have made. There were a couple of open threes that he missed. There was the one play where he went right at Jabari Smith Jr., knocked him down, had a wide open mid-ranger, and just missed it. So some of it was just him not knocking down shots. But I think it was about him being uncomfortable with this Rockets defense really getting after his handle. There were countless times of him kind of losing control of the ball. Sometimes he would get it back, sometimes he wouldn't. He had 3 turnovers, which is a lot for him because he doesn't pass the ball a ton. He doesn't put the ball on the floor a ton. He doesn't, when he gets the ball, a lot of times it's either an easy pass to someone on the perimeter or that shot's going up. And so for him to have those 3 turnovers, it felt like a lot. And it was just because he was forced to create a lot when he wasn't catching the ball with any sort of advantage. And so when he's trying to create an advantage against a defender like Amen Thompson, that's going to be really tough. Or against a defender like Jabari Smith Jr., that's tough. Which he did a couple of times, and he was able to score when he did have Reed Shepherd on him, which I like to see. When he did finally get the mismatch, then he was able to knock it in. But it was just, he couldn't get all the way to the basket, so it was a lot of fadeaway mid-rangers, and he wasn't knocking those down against the length of the Rockets. Now, one thing you can always rely upon Keegan for is some great defense. Despite him not having too much of an impact, on the offensive end. He was great defensively. He was rebounding the ball. He ended the game with 11 rebounds, had a steal, had a couple of blocks, had very good hands inside, stripping balls. I also loved what Precious was giving us in that first half, the minutes he was giving us, where his activity defensively, getting after it on the glass, and dunking everything on the offensive end. The Kings started that second quarter pretty well, going up 4, but the Rockets responded with a quick 8-0 run, knocked down a couple of threes. That's when DeMar was kind of forced to take over the offense. The Kings were battling to try to prevent the Rockets from getting on the offensive glass because the Rockets, at the end of that second quarter, went with a Steven Adams plus Alperen Sengun lineup, and the Kings countered with Precious Achiuwa and Maxime Raynaud. And like I said, I loved that Precious was getting after it, and then it was DeMar DeRozan knocking down shots to get us that 1-point lead going into halftime. So DeMar had 12 on the half, Max had 14, Precious had 8 points, 4 rebounds, 2 steals. Keegan only had the 2.6 rebounds and 2 blocks, but they did close up that points in the paint disadvantage that they had in the first quarter. At halftime, it was only 30-28. One of the big stories, though, was 7 fouls on the Kings to 1 foul on the Rockets. That was pretty crazy. The Kings were 0 for 1 from the line. They started the game 0 for 3 from the line. At one point, they were 1 for 5 from the line, ended 5 for 10. Free throw shooting has been a problem for the Kings recently, but in this one, they just didn't get to the free throw line at all. And that was because the ball stopped moving and they stopped getting inside. The third quarter was where everything fell apart for the Kings. 26 points in the paint for the Rockets in that third quarter alone. Keep in mind they had 30 points in the paint in the first half. So just 4 less points in the paint in the third quarter alone than the first half. Amen Thompson started off getting downhill. Keegan picked up 2 fouls on Amen. Also, the Kings did a much worse job of defending in transition in the third quarter than they did in the first half. In the first half, they were constantly knocking the ball away and getting deflections to stop these transition opportunities for the Rockets. In the third quarter, it was much different. In the third quarter, Amen Thompson was getting downhill at will. I remember early in the third quarter, he had like 4 takes to the rim. And he didn't score on all of them. He actually missed a couple of pretty easy ones around the rim, I would say. But he was drawing fouls. He was hitting some of them at the rim. Drew Eubanks had one play where he didn't step in front, and that forced Keegan to foul. DeMar DeRozan went cold, missed 3 pretty open shots. Keegan finally hit a 3, but he was still struggling from the mid-range and with his handle. It was really Russell Westbrook that kept the Kings in this game, and that kept the lead for the Kings. He was making a big impact. He got a steal. He was getting downhill, scoring, had a nice one-legged mid-ranger off glass that he's kind of known for, was setting up Raynaud pretty well inside. And there was one sequence from Max that I really loved when he was getting set up by Russ, where he caught the ball pretty far out and he just went to a floater. It was a long floater that he hits. It's like, okay, he's got that in his bag. Nice. But then the next play, he catches it in a similar spot on the other side of the court. And he this time fakes the floater. Sengun bites on it, and Max goes left and finishes off glass. It was beautiful, where he just had made a play. Now he knows the defense is going to respect that. Goes to a little fake, and then goes to a different move. It was beautiful. He also had a nice tip-out offensive rebound. So the Kings had a 9-0 run, sparked by Russell Westbrook and Maxime Raynaud. The Rockets would respond to that, though, with a 6-0 run to tie it, and then that was kind of where they went on a massive run. Where, I mean, you can consider the rest of the third quarter a run for the Rockets. I don't know the exact number, but, they would end up taking, I think, a 16-point lead into the fourth quarter. The Rockets were down 6, and then all of a sudden they were up 16. So a 22-point swing there. And a lot of it was in the open floor. A lot of it was just the Kings not being able to stay in front of players, or just not communicating and not picking guys up. And I think that was the most frustrating part, because there were multiple transition opportunities for the Rockets where just guys for the Kings were back and nobody stepped in front. Nobody took ball. Jabari Smith Jr. had 2 opportunities where he just walked up wide open. But then the Rockets defense just started getting after it. And you could see the Kings were on their heels. And I think once the Rockets kind of smelled the blood in the water, that's when they really got it going. They were feeling it. Everyone was getting after it defensively for them. They were forcing a bunch of turnovers, getting those transition opportunities, getting those cross matches, and then converting at the rim or getting the offensive rebounds because they had their big guys. I mean, the amount of times that Şengün had Malik Monk on him, like, it was a lot. Or Kevin Durant had Malik Monk on him. It was always Malik Monk. Speaking of Malik Monk, he was the only guy that was providing offense in that third quarter. Hit a three, got into the paint a couple of times, but I mean, the Rockets could not stop scoring. They were getting inside at will. They were getting to the free throw line. There were a couple of, one, at the end of the half, it was a pretty sad defensive possession for the Kings where Kevin Durant's just handling the ball out at half court, and the Kings just kind of send Neek at him. Just, they send him to double out of nowhere. And it was just, it was such a dumb play. It was so frustrating because it's like, why are you doubling him? He's just standing there. He can see the whole floor. He's like a 7-footer and he's way out at half court. It's going to take forever for the double to get there. And so he just makes one pass. The Rockets make like one more pass and it's an easy bucket. So that was a dumb possession to end the quarter, but I mean, it was pretty much over at that point. You could kind of feel where the Kings were down 16 and they were not going to get back into this game. I did like one play from Neek where he had a nice interception, went behind the back in transition, but he just couldn't finish over Steven Adams. Steven Adams was making a big impact, had a great contest at the rim on that possession. Steven Adams, he always seems like he's kind of glued to the ground, like he's a big guy who can't really jump, but then all of a sudden someone's going up for a layup and here comes Steven Adams out of nowhere. And he covers more ground than he looks like he should be able to. And it's always surprising, but he's always effective as a rim protector. To start the fourth quarter, Neek also made another defensive play. So he got that interception towards the end of the third quarter, then drew a charge on Amen Thompson. That was impressive because the Kings had tried to do that a few times and it hadn't worked out very well. But the fourth quarter was all about the young guys. We started with a lineup of Russell Westbrook, Malik Monk, Neek Clifford, Keegan Murray, and Precious Achiuwa. And then Keon came in for Russ. Max came in for Precious. And I think those were the only two lineups we played for the entire fourth quarter. And I think it's good for especially Keon Ellis and Neek Clifford to get those minutes because those are two guys that just play like 5 minutes a game here, 7 minutes a game here, and it's just not good for their flow. And so Neek Clifford had one basket. Keon went, I think, 0 for 3 from 3. So it's not like they were lighting it up or anything, but just get them on the court and get them some time, get them some run to hopefully see a shot go down. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing from Keon a little bit is can't knock down a 3 because he's not in rhythm at all. It was Monk and Precious carrying the offense at the start of the fourth quarter, but then Şengün was really dominating. And that was to put this game away. It was all Şengün working out of the post and playmaking from there. He was really good. Keon had that awful foul on Şengün as the shot clock expired. Got to be more aware than that. But it was all Malik Monk on fire from 3. I think he hit 3 threes in the fourth quarter, if I'm not mistaken. And then he blocked Şengün at the rim. But nobody else was really making a shot for the Kings. Keon, Keegan, Neek Clifford all could not hit a shot. Neek Clifford's shot was definitely looking rough. So we need to see some improvement from him. But Raynaud was still pretty good. He had a really nice move off of the dribble, taking it left off of glass. He was cooking. So I was loving seeing him get his numbers up and get his career high there. And just seeing those young guys play and hopefully get into a bit of a rhythm so you can see them play better in future games. Talking a little bit more about Neek Clifford. When the Rockets first went zone in the first quarter, when Neek Clifford was on the court, the Kings, him and Keon Ellis, they both took pretty quick left wing threes from pretty much the same spot. They both missed. But one play that I liked from Neek was he showed that he was willing to shoot. And this is something that I talked about a lot with Maxime Raynaud when he was passing up open 3-point shots in the past couple of games, where you just have to shoot. Like, if you're open, you just have to shoot. And maybe that shot from Neek wasn't the greatest shot, but he's showing that he's willing to shoot. And sometimes that's all that really matters, because then the next play after Keon Ellis had followed it up with another miss, Neek Clifford catches it in the corner, has Steven Adams coming out at him, pump fakes, drives baseline, then finds a nice pass into someone. I can't remember who it was, but it was a nice play because he showed that he was willing to shoot the 3, and now all of a sudden Steven Adams is closing out hard on him. And so he's able to use that to his advantage. Same thing with Maxime Raynaud, where he knocked down a couple of early 3s, and then all of a sudden Şengün is pressuring him out on the perimeter. So, and that creates cutting lanes for other guys. So just having the confidence to shoot the three sometimes is more important than actually even making it. Looking at the box score from this game, Raynaud with the 25 points, 10 for 15 from the field, 2 for 2 from 3, 3 for 3 from the free throw line, had 6 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, a block, was showing a bit of everything. The only thing that we want to see more from him is on the defensive glass. He had 4 defensive rebounds. We want to see more defensive rebounds from him. And I would say that's kind of my only criticism this game. I mean, sure, he had some misses, but can't really critique the offensive end at all. He was just hitting those floaters around the rim, knocking down the three, producing off of the dribble, which was pretty cool to see. And then the other leading scorer, Malik Monk, off the bench as well with 25 points, 10 for 19 from the field, went 5 for 8 from 3. Also added in 5 assists on 0 turnovers, 2 steals for him. Neek went 0 for 3 from 3. Keon went 0 for 4 from 3. Neek had 2 points. Keon had no points. So they were struggling on the offensive end, no doubt. But then the other guy off the bench, Precious Achiuwa, 10 points, 4 rebounds, 2 steals. He continues to be impressive on the offensive end as much as the defensive end. Because sure, he gets after it on the defensive end, but he always just seems to be added in like 10 points, and it's really cool to see. Then you get to the starters. Notice how I started with the bench unit. The starters, not great. Zach LaVine, 19 minutes, 2 points. I'm not mad at that. Like, sure, like, if he's not playing well, just play him 19 minutes and play the young guys when you know you're not going to win this game. I mean, why not? That's kind of what I've been asking for. DeMar had the 12 first half points where he carried the offense in the second quarter. None in the second half. Westbrook, 12 points, 9 assists, 4 rebounds, 4 turnovers. Definitely had some good stretches, also had some bad stretches. Had some stretches where he's carrying the team offensively and was helping this team go on runs. Had other stretches where it felt like the spacing he was providing was brutal and he was kind of on the ball too much. But, you know, that's kind of how it is with Russell Westbrook. Some good, some bad. Keegan played 37 minutes. Even in a game, in a blowout, when we're playing the bench, he's still playing 37 minutes. Like, can we just chill just a tiny bit? You know, like, get Devin Carter some minutes. Please. I was begging for Devin Carter at the end of this game. Why is he locked on the bench in the dungeon? Why? I don't know. Anyways. But Keegan had 5 points, 2 for 11 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3. But he had the 11 rebounds, a steal, 2 blocks. And then Drew Eubanks, why is he starting 10 minutes? Like, came out of the game after 2 minutes in both the first half and the second half. So, like, what are we doing? But I'm just excited to see more Maxime Raynaud in the future because this guy continues to get better and better. He was not the rookie I was expecting to play like this early in the season. I was expecting it to be Neek Clifford. I was expecting Maxime Raynaud to take a little bit longer as a center who needs to kind of bulk up a little bit. Instead, it is him playing really well and Neek Clifford being the guy who's taking more time to really get into things. But nonetheless, I mean, that injury to Sabonis, a blessing in disguise, just like the Keegan Murray injury early in this season where I talked about other guys getting opportunities and us just seeing the young guys play, and Maxime Raynaud with Sabonis out is just getting a ton of burn, and it's doing great things for his development. And I know there was a little bit of a debate on Kings Twitter in the Kings community the past couple of days about should we just be playing the young guys or do they deserve it or are they ready? And it's like, Maxime Raynaud, I mean, no, he's not ready to be like playing big minutes on a winning basketball team, but the Kings are not that. And so, I mean, he is earning his minutes. This is a 5-17 team. It's like, if anything, the starters aren't earning their minutes. Raynaud earns his minutes, and I just want to see the young guys play because that's what's entertaining to me. Maybe you guys have a different opinion, but to me, it's very entertaining watching Maxime Raynaud kind of grow and learn. The Kings' next game is against the Miami Heat on the road. The Heat are 14-8 on the season. They've been playing really well. Led by Davion Mitchell. Davion Mitchell has been playing really well as the starting point guard for the Heat, obviously on the defensive end, but he's been a guy who can give you a double-double on any given night, points and assists. Andrew Wiggins has been playing pretty well this season, and so that's going to be a tough matchup for the Kings with Bam Adebayo and Andrew Wiggins. It's going to be interesting to see Maxime Raynaud versus Kel'el Ware for me. Two, big 7-footers long who can step out and hit the three. Both are very skilled players. Ware is someone that I really wanted the Kings to draft. Instead, Now we have Raynaud in the second round of this past draft, so at least eventually we got that big 7-foot stretch big that I wanted, but I'm excited to see those two go at it. And I'm interested to see if we get a starting lineup change because, we have this whole Drew Eubanks starting situation, and if Maxime Raynaud keeps playing like he is, like at some point that starting lineup will change. I don't think they're going to just continue to play Drew Eubanks 10 minutes a game in the starting lineup if Raynaud consistently is playing, well, not consistently like 25 points every night, but if he just continues to give positive impact every night, at some point they're gonna start him. I think so. We'll see if it happens pretty quickly, as in this next game, or if it takes him a few more games of playing well before he earns that spot. Anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back on Saturday to recap that game against the Miami Heat, so I will see you guys then. Peace.